had the weirdest dinner the other night. I don't like to eat alone at fast food restaurants. I usually just zoom through and pick up something through the drive-thru. But I was out of town. I just felt compelled to go to this Taco Bell. I walked in, got my order, and I had unbuttoned my overshirt a little bit, and the word Bible could clearly be seen on my undershirt. Someone pointed at me, also eating alone, and started in with questions. They had a romantic interest that believed the earth was eternal and we all spring forth and we should worship Mother Earth. They had a basic understanding of Christianity, but they didn't understand why and where they should go and how they should next mature and how to respond to this woman and how to point people in his life to the truth. He was in dire need and he had some very hard and challenging questions, but the Lord had blessed and guided me here. It was no accident that I was at this Taco Bell. In fact, I was in Charlotte, North Carolina, studying to be able to present I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist. So as a preview of this material, we're going to go through just a little bit of it, just as a brief preview to whet your appetite for a future event that we're going to hold here at Calvary Union Fellowship. We go through this in two-hour sessions is the current plan, so that we can be ready to give a defense for the hope that is within us, right? That's one of my favorite verses. It is the verse that we get apologetics from. 1 Peter 3:15 says, "Sanctify Christ as Lord in your hearts, always being ready to make a defense to everyone who asks you to give an account for the hope that is in you, yet with gentleness and reverence." Even though I didn't want that interruption in the middle of my dinner, I was commanded by Christ to be ready, to be able to give an answer to him, to be able to help him. And why? Well, as part of Christ's body, we have the message. This isn't just for people interested in apologetics. This isn't just for somebody who's interested in being a pastor or an evangelist. This is for all Christians. We carry within us the message that they need to be able to deal with their eternity, to be able to deal with the toughest and biggest issues in life. And we have it, and we should know why we believe what we believe. And we should believe what we believe because it's true and be able to articulate that to those around us, because we don't want to leave them behind, right? Now we're going to look at, does God exist? And in doing so, we're going to look at some arguments for God. In the beginning, there was nothing, and then there was something. We're going to look at how that statement and how that reality points to the existence of God, who is spaceless, timeless, and immaterial, and extremely powerful. Okay? There are certain characteristics we can learn about God because of what would be required to create the universe. This is called the cosmological argument, and it's only one of several that build a cumulative case argument for God. But of course, we don't have time to go through them all. We can only go through a little. So again, in the beginning, there was nothing. What is nothing? Let's define it properly. Some out there will say nothing is a quantum vacuum of particles, or there's natural laws, or there's these other things. Let's define nothing correctly. This guy, who has an awesome beard, his name is Aristotle. He said, nothing is what rocks dream about. That's pretty good. Nothing at all. Zip, not a no thing. Rocks don't even dream, okay? That's the idea. Absolutely nothing. No smuggling in any space or time or matter. Nothing like that. Absolutely nothing. And then from nothing, we had an origin event. Something happened that caused us to have space, matter, and time. Now, of course, God's Word agrees on that, and it gives us some details about that. But science does as well. Here's what Stephen Hawking, who is probably the world's most known physicist, and also, believe it or not, occasionally records for cartoons, said this: "Almost everyone now believes that the universe and time itself had a beginning at the Big Bang." Alexander Velinkin, a Russian cosmologist, he tells us something, and it also helps us have a hint as to understand why this is important. With the proof now in place, cosmologists can no longer hide behind the possibility of a past eternal universe. There is now no escape. They have to face the problem of a cosmic beginning. Why is this important that we know the universe had a beginning? Because for a long time, one of the important things that atheists had said and used as a defense for atheism, or philosophical naturalism, or materialism, if you're not familiar with those words, the idea that there's nothing but just stuff. Well, they said the stuff has always been here. It just happens that over time, eventually it came to this configuration. Well, science says the stuff hasn't always been here. The matter hasn't always been here. And the space hasn't always been here. And the time hasn't always been here. And because of that, that means we don't have an eternal universe. That means we need somebody to cause it. Someone would have to start the universe, so we need a starter. Or to use Hawking's idea, if you say Big Bang, well, that would still need a Big Banger. So we're going to look at the origin event. All right? Now we're going to look at evidence. This is not a God of the gaps kind of reasoning. We're not looking at, oh, well, something happened, we don't understand, therefore God did it. That is not what we're doing. We're actually looking at scientific evidence here to point back. And elsewhere throughout this curriculum, we'll be looking at philosophical evidence as well. And when we get into the historicity of Christ, we're going to be digging through all kinds of cool stuff. But we're looking at actual evidence, not God of the gaps. Here, there is a particular thing to help us remember that the universe had a beginning. It's called surge. No, not actually this soda, not Surge, the 90s Mountain Dew alternative with tons of caffeine in it. Although if you've been surfing YouTube for a while, you may want some caffeine. No, this will help us remember. Surge stands for the second law of thermodynamics. The U stands for the universe is expanding. The R stands for radioactive afterglow, which is remnant heat, by the way. G is for the great galaxy seeds, and E is for Einstein's theory of relativity. Now, for the sake of this, we're only going to look at SUE, S-U-E. We'll get into the other parts of the material in the actual session, although all of them work together really well. So looking at S stands for the second law of thermodynamics. This tells us that things are breaking down over time. Now, we know the universe hasn't been going on forever, or else, see, we see a picture of the hourglass here, or else all the sand at the hourglass would be on the bottom. There would already be no usable energy. Say I turned a flashlight on and left it just sitting on the desk. If I had left it sitting on the desk for an infinite amount of time, there would be no more power in the flashlight. The battery would be dead. So because we see things continuing to act and move, we know that at some point, as things continue to get further and further apart, which we can observe, that they'll be called what's heat death in the universe. There'll be what is called heat death in the universe. There'll be no more usable energy. At some point, the universe will be out. If it had been going on forever, that would not be the case. Could not run out, because it would need energy to sustain itself all that time. All right, now the U stands for the universe is expanding. This guy's Hubble. Now, he wasn't named after that thing in the sky. No, it's the other way around. Here he is smoking a pipe. That was the cool thing to do at the time. Not recommending that you guys smoke a pipe necessarily. There he is smoking a pipe, and there he is with his laboratory way back in 1929. He's looking through a telescope, and he observes a light shift from red from the stars. Now, if it had been blue, okay, that would have meant that they were moving closer. But he observed red, and that meant that they were moving further away. Now, what this tells us is that at some point, if you rewind time, I know we don't use VCRs anymore on the rewind button. We could just skip a track back. But when I was a kid, I could remember watching the rewind button and seeing people move back, right, to the beginning. We could actually go back to the point of not just a ball, but nothing. Everything would have collapsed down in. Now, this moving away tells us, hey, we're not out of energy right now. Okay, so they couldn't have been moving away for an infinite amount of time, right? This tells us, hey, there's a beginning of the universe. Hubble is important, and we'll go into more because he helped convince Einstein about his mistake, but just remember that later. We're going to have to skip the R and the G, so we're going to go to just Einstein. Einstein's general theory of relativity involved a fudge factor. He wanted an eternal steady-state universe. That way, it didn't point to a beginner. He knew that. His philosophical predisposition, or presupposition, I should say, that the universe was eternal caused him to introduce the cosmological constant to try to make the math work out in his general theory of relativity. But he made a boo-boo. He divided by zero. Now, even I, a public school graduate from Kentucky, know that you do not divide by zero. You can go directly to jail for dividing by zero. Do not collect do not collect $200. Do not do it. It is not good math. But the evidence changed his mind. Here he is, checking out there, Hubble again with the pipe, checking out the evidence, seeing the shift for himself, and he had to go, the universe did have a beginning. He said after that he wanted to see the mind of God and everything else was just details. Now, we can argue about what Einstein is. Nobody really knows. He denied being pretty much everything at one point or another. But he certainly saw that there was a universe that had a beginning. This points back to God. Why? Because to begin from nothing, we had to have something that was a mind that chose to act. We had to have something that was immaterial because matter began then. Beyond time because time began then. Beyond space because space began then. And powerful and creative and intelligent to design things the way they are. Although we'll go into the teleological argument a little bit later. Jastrow, who wrote this book called God and the Astronomer, said this: astronomical evidence leads to a biblical view of the origin of the world. The essential element in the astronomical and biblical accounts of Genesis is the same. It's as if Psalm 19:1 is right, because it is. The heavens declare the glory of God. The best data we have concerning the Big Bang are exactly what I would have predicted had I nothing to go on but the 5 books of Moses, the Psalms, and the Bible as a whole. Certainly there was something that set it all off. I can't think of a much better theory of the origin of the universe to match Genesis. The Bible agrees. The hope of eternal life, which God promised before the beginning of time. Titus 1:2. The universe had a beginning. Ted, pastor here at Calvary Union Fellowship, was telling me that he had read some articles that there were some scientists now pushing against the idea that there was a beginning. I can't help but suspect their motivation would be that when you look at the beginning of the universe and you point to something that's spaceless, timeless, and immaterial, you're already just accepting the supernatural. Something, and that's what that means, beyond the natural. It means that materialism is defeated right there. And that's an important thing in our culture. The idea that all this is stuff, all that we are is matter. If the evidence points to a beginning of all matter, something had to begin that. And that means that matter can't be true. I was able to tell this gentleman this. I was able to talk to him and walk him through kind of a simplified version that he could share with the romantic interest in his life, this lady whom I didn't know, who thought that we worship the earth. Because, see, that's just a created thing, just like Romans 1 says. That's created. We got to go back to the beginning, back to the source. All these things are part of an argument that point us towards God. And then when we understand that there is such a thing as truth, that there is such a thing as God, and that miracles are possible and the New Testament is reliable, we're left with the conclusion, when everything fits together, that the Christian God is the answer. And we get there by evidence. I hope you'll stay paying attention to this YouTube channel and to everything else that I've linked below, okay? So that you can follow along and come to the event, come check it out, and see the whole presentation. Even if you're not a believer, I think this evidence could change your mind. You at least want to be rational, right? And check out the evidence for yourself.